It's all yours.
Thank you. All
Good
right,
luck.
nice to be here. Thank you. Yeah, so we're going to talk about the updated Stanford Identity Guide today. I think you can see that on your screen. But I was thinking about it. I was wondering, why is an identity guide relevant to UX UI? It's relevant to a lot of things when it comes to brand, but branding can inform UX and UX can define branding. They're super interrelated. And brand experience and user experience can and should work together to kind of engage our audiences. And to reinforce the brand online, we need to start by understanding it. So that's kind of the basis of this guide. The second reason it's important or relevant is, in brand, we typically focus on things like colors and images and logos and tone of copy. But there's the element that can be overlooked is how the brand should act. And I think today it's probably one of the most important things. Yeah, how the brand should act and brand behavior. So we want our audiences, whether they're students or parents or global community, local Stanford community, when they visit our website, they're interacting with our brand, and we want our website to behave toward them to affect their perceptions about our university in a positive way and to communicate effectively. So that was kind of the basis of updating our identity guide. But as far as some of the history, this is version 3.0 of the Stanford Identity Guide. Version 2.0 was in place for about 4.5 years, and it was called the Identity Toolkit, and it was super useful. And we even had a 1.0 in place a few years prior. So when we updated to 3.0, we moved to a more user-friendly platform so that it was easily updated. And then we soft launched about 6 months ago. So a soft launch for us was we had certain groups that we presented to, and we got a lot of feedback from them, and we were able to make pretty big updates and improvements based on their feedback. And then we launched the site in January. So over the last 2 months, we've had about 13 to 15,000 page views per month, and about 5 to 6,000 sessions per month, which is, it's being used. That's the good news. So what we wanted new, let's look at the site itself. We wanted to inspire and align Stanford visual and verbal communications. We do offer policies and guidelines for things like logos, but the creative elements are not mandates. We just want to support a strong, cohesive Stanford identity across the university. And we took a collaborative project approach. No one person can be in charge of all of the content in this site. There are so many amazing content contributors across Stanford. So we collaborated with them for different areas. And that was a super fun process to dive into and to do, and super helpful. We're working on an iterative .1 update already. We're going to try to do that every 6 months so that this guide is not a snapshot. It's more of an evolving tool. So we're on the homepage right now. And one of the new things was the metrics over the last 4.5 years were really helpful and helping us define how the main navigation worked, as well as how this I would like to site. These were the most often requested areas of our old site. And so we put them in that order. It may change when we do our .1 update, but we're not sure. We have to take a look at what people are really looking at. But so far, seems that the feedback seems to be good. And then as you scroll down, so we have, our main nav, we have these entry points underneath, and then we have a PDF, which is kind of a consolidation of everything in this online guide. It's meant to be, you can download it, you can send it to vendors, you can look at it yourself. We worked with an outside agency named Ology on this, and it was super helpful for their outside view to help us get clarity in certain areas and certain things we thought we wanted. The I would like to, we've had a lot of hits here in order, left to right. We added some helpful resources that people wanted. They wanted to access university communications often. Some people didn't know about web services, so we wanted a portal there. And then Decanter, which is a really great tool that is, for all of our online designers. We collaborated heavily with web services to make sure that this site reflects the same information as this style guide does. So I'll just walk across the top navigation and point out some things that are new. Um, the content resources in this brand section, all of these are new. Prior to this site, we did not really have a creative platform in terms of content. You'll see some of them are password protected or identity protected. So we wanted to develop a brand statement that everything at Stanford from start, when the university first started until now, could be based on. And the idea for this is not to replicate it in content, but just to get an idea in terms of what the Stanford brand is. So we added the essence and then the context that we were talking about. I should say each page on the site, we tried to add widgets on the right that link to helpful things we thought people would be also looking for when they're in these different sections. But they're how-tos, best practices, different links that might change over time. The voice and tone section is new. We really wanted to add a little bit of how we say our message, what some personality words are right now. A lot of people contributed to these across the campus, including leadership, faculty. We got some student input. We wanted to make sure that these felt authentic and included what we mean by them. But these could change. These aren't things that you need to use in content. It's just suggestions. It's like a platform to start with. Messaging, our outward facing communications, we thought it was important for people to see what is it that we're communicating about the university to the outside world. Currently, our vision is one of the big sites that communicates a lot of leadership messages. Of course, stanford.edu, Stanford Facts, financial aid is a huge area, so we included those. Some boilerplate text about Stanford, which can be cut and pasted. You can use this verbatim. You can start with it as a platform. And then some best practices for writing. Reminder about accessibility, diversity and inclusion, and some specific tips to keep in mind if you are tasked with writing, knowing your audience and leading with people, avoiding jargon, avoiding acronyms, which is a big one at, at Stanford, any university. And we included an article here from Psychology Today about why using acronyms might not be in the best interest of your brand. It's not very inclusive, so a little bit of heft there. But visual identity is pretty much the same as what we have. We've added a couple of new tools. There's a logo art sheet. We had a lot of confusion regarding how to use our logos, on what colors could be used on which backgrounds, and when to work with our trademarks and licensing group. So that can be downloaded and sent to partners or vendors. And then each logo page is pretty much the same. On this homepage, we've added some information about Pantone colors, about size and clear space. But when you go to all of the different marks, I think there was a lot of confusion, I should say. The verbiage logos encompasses everything else. There are so many ways to say logo. Word marks look like this. Block S with tree has its own icon. The university seal is its own icon. There are combinations that you can use these word marks and icons within. But each page has a skip to downloads. So if you want to download a PNG or an EPS file, you can. And some of the do's and don'ts for each. Department branding is its own special area. Basically, it's how to brand your department using a Stanford logo. You can either download a template and customize it. And we also added something new, which is a logo generator. So this is, started out with a lot of funky stuff that wasn't working quite right, but we've gotten it honed and we're still improving it. If you want to use it, basically you click on the style that you want, you type in whatever you need to, in this case, department name. And when you click generate logo package, it'll just generate a package and then send it to your hard drive, which will include all of the 8 most common formats and colors that you typically will need. So that's been fairly successful. The idea was to have people not need to have Illustrator or Photoshop. So design elements, I'm not quite sure what this is doing this. Let's see. So under design elements, we kept our color palette pretty much the same. Our primary colors are what they always have been for Stanford: cardinal red, white, black, and the cool gray family. We did update our accent colors to tie in more with our natural environment in Northern California, as well as some of our architectural features. But one thing that really helped was working with the digital designers to understand that they wanted a light and a dark of each primary hue, as well as all of the mixes, so that they could use these for on-off states or different tone-on-tone design. And all of these design principles regarding the light and dark can be used by any designer. So they can be used in-house or externally. Web interactive colors, super helpful add from the web services people who have lots of experience with these. And then using color. So sometimes when you're starting a project, you want to start by understanding what it is you're trying to communicate. We developed a grid that is based on a formal, bold, casual, or subtle communication. And we placed our accent colors in here so you can see what we're meaning by this. You know, the subtle corner, the bold corner, and our main assets here. But the idea is that you can develop spectrums that are based on color and mood. Maybe a formal spectrum looks like this top. Maybe a bold is more in the middle here. And the idea is that each color bar, the expanse of it is how much you might use in a given project. So this is an example of a formal and bold palette here. Casual and subtle. Typography for us stayed relatively the same. We decreased the amount of fonts we had and focused on our primary font, which is Source Sans, and added accent typefaces, which were already being used by many of our schools. The Roboto family in all of its forms we added here for different use, different emphasis. System fonts is new. We did not have a substitute for Source Sans. Calibri is what we chose for anybody who doesn't want to take the time to download Source Sans or can't, they can use Calibri and Georgia for the serif font. Using type is one of the how-to areas we added. So we talked a little bit about leading and how it can be used, tracking between letter forms, and how you might use type creatively, using all of, Source Sans has 12 different weights. And depending on the emphasis of what you're typing, it can be used in so many different ways. So we showed some examples of what that might be. Photography is a section we did not have before, so that's new. And we focused on 4 different areas: portraits, moments, environments, and details. So that whether you're doing a stock search or whether you're hiring a photographer who you need to art direct, you can ask them about, you can tell them how you would like the photos to emerge, depending on what project you're developing. We chose expressive to controlled. And an example of that would be for a portrait. Maybe you request something that's more expressive with lots of body movement. Or maybe you need something that's more controlled, which is a more comfortable body posture, but more of a straight headshot type of thing. Moments or candids can also be very expressive and move into more of a controlled space. Environments are something that we see a lot of in our photography at Stanford, but we thought, let's start adding active occupants and people, as well as the more traditional architectural shots that we're all used to. And details, if you're hiring a photographer, it's nice to ask them for details, because sometimes you're in an environment that has really cool stuff going on. And if you ask them to just take some shots of that, you might be able to save them for later or use them in the project that you're doing. Graphic elements we added. These are based on all of the architectural and natural environments in California. We added watercolor graphics. Each graphic type can be downloaded below, but if you click on the page, you can see what we're meaning by each of these. Watercolor graphics, geometric paint, filled geometric plane, and line work graphics. So let's look at the geometric plane. These are based on architectural elements around the campus. So the rosette, the arch, the tile, and the roof, you can combine these into all kinds of different patterns. So we offer them as individual plane graphics or as the patterns themselves to download. And same with line work. And to illustrate, I'm going to hop down here to using the brand. To illustrate how these elements might look in a project. These are not real projects. We put together some sample brochure covers and brochure spreads to show what we're meaning and what you might use. This, for example, uses the geometric plane, the line work, source sans as a type reference, and the color is a primary accent. So this is what's, maybe it inspires somebody to do something that to start something they're working on. But we wanted to show, here's what you might do with these elements. Here's some small postcards, a large postcard, an exterior pole banner, and a large banner. Jumping back up, we did develop some icons. We have a Stanford icon set you can download, but we also wanted to start linking to outside resources like the Google Material Design icon set and make some recommendations as far as icon colors. So we recommend that you use them in black, cardinal red, gray, or reversed out white. Under using the brand, I'm going to go back here for a second. This plan for project success, this is a really helpful tool no matter what area of the university you're working in within communications. You can start a project. I'm not quite sure where that is. It's basically an outline that guides you through the description, the target audience, the key messages, the call to action, how you would measure success, and what you might mitigate or move out of your way on a given project. So there's been a lot of success with this form so far. People have used it and enjoyed it. It's been helpful. Okay, so web design. This web design section is a real collaboration between University Communications and the Web Services Group. And it's, encompasses all of the items that are in Decanter, as well as things like brand compliance. This is a question we get quite often. What makes my website brand compliant? So we've indicated what's required in terms of elements, type, color, and what's recommended. Some helpful resources are also listed here. And then in each of these, I'm going to go to mobile apps. This is another new section. In each of the right-hand widget lists, we've tried to include a question contact for each section because this is just an overview in most cases. If you want to go deeper into a given subject, having a person to ask questions of is super important. So we added that. Social media. Video. Video is split into two things at Stanford. We have our Stanford Video Group, which is a for fee hire that you can work with for promotional videos, very high-end videos. But Kurt Hickman in the University Communications Group also wrote how to produce a video on behalf of Stanford. And these are all the tools and tricks he uses, as well as his best practices. And if you have more questions, you can contact Kurt. We added email signatures, just a very basic template approach. And our templates are still a work in progress, but basically we have PowerPoint, business cards, letterhead, envelopes, Microsoft Word documents. If you want to place an order, we have direct lines to a couple different vendors we work with to order. Swag. So this is a new section, working with trademarks and licensing. We show some examples of things that they've produced with different groups across campus. But one of the most popular things here is this licensed vendor list. They maintain and update this, and there are many, many vendors that you can work with. Starting with this list is easy because they know how to replicate, our colors, and they know our standards. Under resources, we have policies and guidelines. So any of the policies and guidelines relating to communications can be found here. support. So if you need support with visual brand identity or name use, merchandise products and trademarks, you can find it here. Community. So we try to list things that are relevant to the communicators community here. And we just had a conference for communicators in March. So we listed it here. You can see an overview and agenda if you want to go back and view some parts of it. Communities of practice. Sure, it's a great program. There, we listed the groups which might be of most interest for viewers of this website: creatives, creative writers, and the UXers, user experience. And then there are lots of other schools and groups within Stanford developing their own set of identity guides. So the idea is to list them here so that you can see them, be inspired by them. There are a few that are coming soon. And then showcase, we just wanted to list some projects that some Stanford colleagues around the campus are producing. So we've divided it in digital and miscellaneous. So hopefully as you're getting a project started, for example, up here in brochures, we've had a lot of people say, you know, I looked at these projects, not only for creative, but just to see how this group is maybe communicating with that audience. What does the outline for their brochure look like? There are lots of different ways you can use this, but the idea is just to share. Sign it up here. So that's basically it. That's the high level view of what is on this identity site. We're going to measure success based on, you know, the usual metrics, like how many people are visiting, where they're going, but also in terms of how aligned branding across the campus is becoming, and the kinds of questions that we receive. It looks like we might have some questions here. So,
yes.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, there's been some question in the chat, and then I understand that you don't have easy access to the chat room. One question has been, how do you enforce brand compliance? Does it ever become an issue?
Well, it does. You know, here at Stanford, we, and I think that this is appropriate for any brand. Brand compliance is something that we have guidelines for. And as far as enforcing it, it's more of an adoption practice. So the people, when you want guidelines, they're there for you. There's a logic behind it. And I really haven't encountered many situations at Stanford where people don't comply when they understand why. So, but it's never a dictate. You know, the idea is that here are the guidelines and their best case use out there. And more people are adopting as they understand what they need to do, how to do it, and why. So yes, those issues do come up, and that's how we address them in university communications. And I think that a lot of people across campus are doing that as well. But the intent of this guide is to really just show what are the guidelines. And if you have questions about how to use them or why, then you can contact myself or whoever's listed as a contact on that given page.
Lots of good comments, lots of congratulations in the chat. If there is anybody in the Zoom that would like to unmute themselves and ask a question, you're welcome.
Was a question about accessibility. I'm pretty sure, I mean, there was quite a few mentions of accessibility on the web pages and so on, but I think a lot of people at Stanford aren't aware maybe how the colors work together to make things accessible and other issues of making things.
Yes, yes, that's a good point. We do list accessibility for colors and contrast on each page, usually in the widget section. The web interactive colors in particular are compliant with all of our accessibility standards. But in general, we try to defer to the accessibility group, the SOAP group, that Stanford Online Accessibility Program. So we have a lot of links to that. I think the most extensive description of accessibility is in the color section. But again, there are links here. So I think you can get a good overview about what to use and why from this site. But if you want to dive deeper, it really is a good idea to click on using colors on websites on the SOAP site. And we've been collaborating a lot with them because a lot of questions come into us that we're not the experts on. So we forward it to them. And my understanding is they're updating their site as well to reflect a lot of the answers and make it a lot more user-friendly.
Yeah, I'm also sort of thinking that the brand, part of the brand is making sure that Stanford is accessible, not just with colors, but also, let's say, for people who are blind.
Correct, correct.
All
Yes.
text for images and so on.
Yeah, all aspects of accessibility are super important. That's part of our brand, is being inclusive and helping people, you know, see what they need to see, hear what they, all of those aspects are important. And again, the accessibility folks have so much expertise in that our job is to help funnel questions when they're not able to be addressed here. But yes, absolutely, you're absolutely right. So each section, whether it's video or web or colors, we do reference accessibility and its importance in building digital tools. Let's see, I actually see some questions over here. What resources or inspiration did you use for the color guide, branding, and other challenges? That's a great question. So we went outside of higher ed and looked at some of the best branding that industry has to offer, whether it was tech or even retail, and tried to look at what was working and why. And my background, I work with a lot of different brands, and you know, guidelines instead of dictates often work, unless you're Apple. You know, I mean, you want to help people understand what the benefit of using this is, how to use it. Is it easy for them to use? And if not, it's our job. We got to make it easy. But we also work with our friends at UC Berkeley. There's a wonderful guy who he's the chief marketing officer, Ram Kapoor, super helpful in sharing. His mode is to be open source, and Berkeley has great branding. So he was really inspirational for us and helped us along this journey. But yeah, those were some of the resources. And then our group, Ology, based in Ohio, really great group, well-versed in higher ed, design and content, but also just good people who had a lot of expertise that we could kind of piggyback on. But yes, so many great people contributed. And then people within Stanford. A lot of people had great inspiration and ideas when they were asked. It was really good. Let's see. The typefaces and photography, let's see. Okay, atomic design, pattern lab storybook. I don't know what that is. I'm going to be honest. If there's something that someone can, okay, yeah. David.
Hi, I'm David Tom. I'm the manager of UX and design at Stanford Web Services. And this identity guide is focused on more than just web. And so if you want to talk about those, you know, pattern lab and atomic design principles, we have a session tomorrow on Decanter and what's up with Decanter moving forward at 1 o'clock tomorrow. And that's Decanter is the design system that we use that kind of brings this to technology in a way. I think that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that, you know, this brand guide is for all of our users across Stanford. And there's all kinds of different levels of expertise. And so we're trying to address kind of the broad scope. And that's why the questions, who to ask questions of on each page is so important, including on the web design page. Because, you know, each one of these is so deep, and there are experts within each section that you'll need to access. This is kind of, it offers expertise, but also deep dive ability. That's really the idea. Whether you're a content producer or a designer of print or a digital designer. So let's see, I'm looking at the questions here. So a question is asked about legacy logos in certain cases. We get that a lot. And the answer is yes, legacy logos are used in many cases. I think that over time, fewer and fewer of them are used. And there's a distinction between our department logos and our and icons. So there's a whole separate discussion regarding, icon use and branding that can go on, and it starts within our department brand section. Let me see if I can get there. But basically, this department brand logo is something that we would like to see used more and more. In addition to this, you can develop an icon or a whole set of identity below the line, below your navigation, that's relevant to your group. But many people do use logos that are legacy, and there's really nothing to stop that. It's part of the culture here to adopt best practices. And so we try to show how you can show your uniqueness and the culture of your group while still using this sort of department logo as well as other icons. But if someone insists, then they're going to use their legacy logo until it becomes unsupportable. That's something that we've seen. So I guess we look at the low-hanging fruit and the people who want to adopt, and then use those groups as best practices. Someone asked who the group was in Ohio. That's Ology. Let's see. Accessibility tends to be an afterthought. Please consider the following. It's mentioned at the bottom of the page. Not everybody will read a web page. That's really good feedback, thereby missing the accessibility section entirely. We've actually had that feedback on the site as well to raise the awareness of that, maybe with its own section, or maybe by bringing it up to the top of the page. So for our next iterative release, I think that's a really good point. Thank you. Let's see. I think that's it. Any more questions? I guess one thing that people have asked is, why are some sections locked? One thing that is the content, our leadership is, this is brand new. We have not had any content direction before at Stanford regarding brand. And so I think the idea is that all of this, we're all reading it, getting used to it before we can be more open source like Berkeley. I don't know that we ever will be, but this was actually requested by leadership, and I think it's fine right now as we roll this out and everybody gets used to these different sections, and as we go forward. But feedback on that would be really helpful too from our user audience. Right, I don't see any more questions. I guess we will wrap it. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for having me on webcam.
Thank you.
Good to
Thanks,
see you all.
Dana. It's awesome.
Bye.
Oh, we did have a query from